Hello, everyone, and welcome back to API Test Hub. This is part two of our series where we are creating Spring Boot application for our API testing. And in this video, we will be covering about the structure of Spring Boot, and we will see how we can create a post request in this application. So let's get started. So Spring Boot follows a kind of structure which is called MVC based layered structure. So it has a layers so that anyone who is seeing this code can understand what the exact functionality is happening inside the code. So it has a controller layer which handles the incoming request, the entity which represents the model classes, all the database attributes it will be having. The third one is the service layer, which will be doing all the logical things, all the business function will be done in the service layer, and the database layer. It handles all the database operations. Now, let us look on the demonstration by the code. So let's get into that. Let's create different API requests for our products application. So before doing that, I want you to understand the structure of Spring Boot application. So it follows some kind of a structure which includes controller, entity, repository, and a service. Let me explain one by one what is the role of these layers. So first is the controller layer. So what it will do is whenever there is a request coming from the browser or from the client, so what controller will do, it will matches the request with the methods. So it can be get, put, post, anything. So whatever the request will be, it will match with that particular method, and then it will go to that our functionality layer, which is service layer. And in this service layer, what will happen is all the functionality, whether you want to get the data, you want to save the data, all the functionality we will write in the service layer. So if you see any application, so if there is a service layer, you have to find out the functionality from there only. So whenever you are debugging it, you have to understand that your first point of contact is the controller. So wherever you see the controller, that is the first point where the request will start. And in between this, whenever you are doing any save or getting the data from the database, right, so that will be the data layer. We call it as a DAO layer as well. So that is a repository wherever your data is storing. So this will store, repo will store your data into the database can be any database. So that is the another layer. So the fourth one is the entity. So entity is the model class. So what it means is, so for example, this product might have different attributes, right? It can have id, it can have name, description, anything. So all of these, the details of the attributes will come under entity. So this entity will act as a model class which will have all the details about the attributes of that particular product application, and it will have the different getters and setters of that product. So that will be used throughout our like flow, because this entity is the one which we are passing from the request as well, and we are getting back data as well in these attributes. So that is the entity. So this was the structure, and as we already know, this products application, this is the main class, this will be the starting point, and after this it will go to the controller, and controller will in turn gives that control to the service. Now let's create our first method, that is creating the products. So it will be, as we know that it's a creation, right? So creation is a post call. So let's create that. So first of all, before doing anything, I will create the properties of that. So as I told earlier, the properties, we use the entity. So here what I will do, I'll create a new class and I'll name it as products entity. So as I told, this is an entity, so I'll annotate it as entity. So it's a products entity. So it's giving me something like it should have it a primary key. So let's create the entities inside this class. So what first I want is I want an ID. So I can go with long ID. I want a name. So it will be a string name. I want the product's price. I'll do it as double price. I want as description as well, say description. So I want these products and I want this ID to be my primary. Like I want it to be the act as an ID of my, so whatever product I have, it should have a unique ID. So this will act as my primary key feature. If you understand the primary key, it identifies your record with some unique identifier. So my each product will be a new product. So what I will do is I'll use one more annotation, that is generated value. What it will do, it will generate the value of ID itself. So I don't need to write any kind of code for it. So it will be generated on its own. So this is the thing. So next what I want is I want the getters and setters, so that my all these attributes can be I can get it and I can set those. So what you can do is go to this and generate getters and setters. So I need getters and setter for all of these and click OK. So you can see that for everything I have getters and setters. So this was about my products entity. Now the next thing is my controller. So I have a product entity. Now what if I'm from the browser, there is a call to a post call. So let's create a controller for that. So I'll name it as, so it will be my product controller and I'll annotate it as request controller. So once you do it, it will identify it as a controller. So Spring Boot automatically sees that, okay, this is a controller and I have to go there. And I'll do one more annotation with the request mapping, and in that I'll give my main URL. So everything will start from API, the first URL and then API, and then comes my other endpoints. Now let's create the post method inside this controller. So what I'll do is I'll create a method which is returning my products entity and it's adding my products. So I named it as add products and it will return the products entity, and I'll annotate it as post mapping. So whenever you do this, it will automatically it will automatically understands that it's your post call. So whenever there is a post call from here, from anywhere, so it will identify that if it's a post call, I have to go here. So inside this, so it's a post call, right? I'm creating something, so I need to pass a request body as well. So what will be my body? It will be the products entity only. So whatever I will be using, so it's a products entity. So as I told that this product, what it will do, it will call something from the service. So what it will do, whatever functionality, so whatever functionality we have to do, it's in the service. So what I have to do is I have to call here this method of a service layer. So we haven't created it, let's create that method. So I'll name it as products service. So this will act as a layer of adding your logic. And before doing this, what I want is I want my DB setup as well, right? So what this product service will do, I think I have named it incorrectly. Let's rename it first. Okay, so what it will do, it will save your data to the database, right? So let's configure database as well. So database layer is this repo. So what I have to do is create a class. We will rename it later on. So I'll name it as products repository. So it will be an interface, not a class here. Why? Because the Spring Boot, right? The Spring gives us inbuilt interfaces which already have the indefined methods, so we can directly use those. We are not bothering about writing the code from the scratch to add your rows into the database. We will just be using the method name, so it's really easy. So we will be using jpa repository here. This products repository is extending GPA repository. So it's also an interface and it has defined all the methods, different methods like save method and all those methods which we will just be calling, and we will be storing our data. So we have to pass up entity to it and one ID. So that is it. You just need to do for setting up your repository. So that is only things you need to do for doing the repository setup. Now coming towards your service, so here in service you want to do this thing like saving your data. To do that, what I'll do this, I'll create, first of all I want to annotate it as my service, that it will be acting as my service layer. So in this, I'll create the object of my repository. So we know that we have a products repository and we will name it as repository. And inside this, what I'll do is I'll create one constructor. So what is a constructor in Java? So constructor is a, like it's called automatically whenever you create an object of a class. So you don't need to do the automatic, need to call it again and again. If you have it, it will be automatically called whenever you create a object of the class. So that is why let's create the constructor. Constructor is the name of is same as the name of the class, and it will be accepting, sorry, it will be accepting my repository. So products repository, and what I'll do is I'll assign it. So that's it, you have to do. Now as my constructor is ready, now what I have to do is I have to create one method which I will be using for saving my data. So let's create that, and it will be returning in returning the products entity only. So let's do that. Products entity, it will be returning, and I'll name it as save products. And it will return me the repository dot save and the products. So it will accept the products entity as products, and will return it, and it will return the products entity. So you need to write it down. What it will do, it will get the products and it will save into your repository, whatever database you're using, it will save there. So our logic is done. So what we need to do is come back to the controller. Here what we want is we want to call that method, right? And before calling that, we need to have one object of that class. So let's create that object first. So that is in service layer, right? So we need to do the object of that class. I will name it as service, and let's create one constructor as well. So I'll create a constructor for my this class, that is products controller, and it will be accepting my product service as a service. And let's assign this value as service. So you have to do like this, and what I'll do is service dot, what was my method name, that was product, so save product, and I'm passing my product. So these were the whole setup you need to do to make a call. So that's all about this. Now let's understand about some of few things. So I have used h2 database, so you can see here these are the some properties you need to add in your application properties to make it working. And let me show you my pom.xml as well. In pom.xml you can see that I have added two dependency, one for this http this h2 database, and other one is the JPA one. So you can whenever you are creating your project, you can add it in the initial level only, the H2 database and the JPA. So that is, these are the two dependency I have added in pom.xml, and in application properties these are the things. So I'll add details in the description box, you can always go there and check. Now what I have to see is, let's run this application. So let's run it. So you always have to come to this main class to run it. So let's see what happens. Yeah, it started running at port 8080. So now let's test our call. So you have to do to go to your Postman, and I have already created this request. So this is running on port 8080, so that is why it's 8080 here. This is post call, so that is why method is post, and this API is my this one. If I show you here, so my request mapping was slash API. So all my request will start from slash API, and it can vary with the endpoint. So the post endpoint is slash product slash add. So I'll do the slash product and slash add. And here I have to give the properties. So as we know that, and in entity we have these properties: ID, name, price, and description. ID I haven't provided because it's automatically generated here, so I don't need to give ID always. So I'm giving a name, price, and description. So let's see what happens when I give send the request. So I'm giving this as a body, so let's send that request. So yeah, I got the 200. Okay, that means my product has been added to the database. So as I told that I have used H2 database to check that my data has added or not, what I can do is I can go to the local host of H2 database. Let's see what happens here. So you will see this kind of window. You just need to connect there, and you will see your products entity. Do you see here? And just run this, and you can see that your data has been added, and you can add as many as rows you want. So that is the whole process of post call. So we just hit I can hit one more. Let's see the laptop. So price maybe $1,200. It's gray color. See, let's hit it again. So with ID 2, we have gray colored object product. So let's run it. We can see that it's added. So this is the post call with Spring Boot. So we will add the different logics as well to it in our later videos. So in the next video, we will see how we can get that. So that was all about the post call. So if you have any question, you can post your queries in the comment. So yeah, that was all about it. Thank you.